Let me talk to Thomas again. Thomas, you were telling us, you're telling us how this cannot be conclusively stated, but we also know that it looks as if the easing of the restrictions have not been good at the moment.
That's correct, Gifty. So sorry again for the sound problems. I don't know exactly what happened, but I hope you can hear me now and your audience can hear me now as well. I was indeed mentioning that this is a big debate happening here in Germany, but not also in Germany, in other parts of Europe and around the world as well, how to balance that idea, that goal of going back to normality, even if it's a new sense of normality, while at the same time making sure that people can be safe and healthy. One of the main arguments here, and one, by the way, that Angela Merkel, the Chancellor, restated today on Monday, is the fact that people here in Germany have to be cautious. They still have to comply with all the hygiene and social distancing measures that are in place, because that is essentially what can guarantee that the numbers don't go up in the country. So that R number, that reproduction rate here in Germany, is certainly something that is of concern here in Germany, but it is not something conclusive just yet. And that's why German authorities have been asking people to remain cautious and remain with that sense of complying with all the rules and regulations that are still in place.
You talk about the fact that the numbers, the rate of infection seems to have gone up. Can you break that down for us to understand? Exactly how can you tell that that a lot more people are being infected faster?
So the rate of reproduction, the reproduction rate, or the R factor, some people call it as well, is an important number because it shows how many people can get infected by one infected person. So basically, if the number is 1, it means that one person is infecting another person. If it goes below 1, it means essentially that the government or the authorities are going in the right direction. It has to be below 1. If it goes above 1, it is a sign of concern, because it also shows to what extent the health system in one particular country could be overwhelmed in a matter of months. So if, for example, 10 people infect 17 or 18, then you can make that an exponential growth and see how big of a problem that might be. So again, the number that people have to look at is that 1.0, and the goal that people have to try and achieve is below that 1.0. Germany had that number of below 1.0 for some time, but for the last 2 days it's been above 1.0, so that's the reason why it's a matter of concern here in the country. Again, the important element there is that it shows to what extent the health system has a capacity to deal with people that get infected. So that's why this number is very important, not only here in Germany, but as an international number as well, to see how different countries can deal with this and how the systems, the health systems, can actually confront the coronavirus pandemic.
It's interesting that you say, because here in Ghana, just last week, we are told that one person was able to infect as many as more than 500 people. And we're told that this happened in a factory. We're yet to get a lot more details on that. But this is certainly a lot of a problem for a country that's health system isn't as robust. So how are authorities there handling this situation, apart from just telling people to tread cautiously? Because obviously that's not enough. People would do what they want to do anyway.
Gifty, that it's important to stress that this is on average, so it doesn't necessarily mean that every person would then infect one person. This is an average number, and this is only one statistic that is analyzed by governments around the world. Another number is the one that you and I have discussed on many occasions here, the number of infected or the number of people who have died. So there are different variables that have to be considered, but one, again, that is important in this particular case is this R factor that we're talking about, the reproduction rate. When you ask specifically about what the German government is doing, you're correct. I mean, it's not only about telling people to behave and telling people to remain cautious. German government and German authorities in general have something that has been described as a sort of emergency brake. The goal there is to avoid a nationwide lockdown. So, for example, if a district in Germany, any district, has 50 confirmed cases per 100,000 inhabitants in the space of 7 days, then that district or that region will have to reintroduce restrictions. Again, the goal is to avoid a national lockdown and to act locally and regionally. So now it's basically up to regional governments, and you can imagine that that's difficult because of coordination issues, to decide in what point and under what conditions then they will reintroduce measures. There have already been, I think, 2 or 3 cases in Germany where districts have reported those more than 50 cases per 100,000 inhabitants. In one of those cases, or two of those cases, it was also in slaughterhouses, so meat processing centers. That's becoming a very big problem here in Germany, as well as care homes. So that gives you an idea of how the government here is dealing with this. Again, it's not only about telling people to behave, it's also about this emergency handbrake that was devised by regional and by federal leaders to try and make sure that when something happens, when there's a so-called cluster of infections, that can be dealt in a quick way, locally or regionally.
Interesting, Thomas there with updates from Berlin. Thomas, thank you so much for that update. We're looking forward to getting better news as we go along. But before I let you go, I almost forgot. How are people reacting to the news that easing the restriction too soon may be problematic? Do people even understand, and is it informing their behavior?
Gifty, I was missing that question from you, because we always discuss something that is particularly important for both you over there and for us here, and that is what people are thinking, how people are actually reacting. This is a particularly important question, so I was actually missing that question from you. There are different views here. So in the last few days, for example, there have been protests here in Germany in different cities of people even defying some of the government social distancing measures. Some of them have even turned violent. And they have been criticized, and there are fears also from the political sphere that these protests could be used for political and extremist views. Those are people who are protesting against restrictions. But then if you look at polls, if you look at poll numbers that have been presented in recent days and recent weeks, people do tend, a majority does tend to be in favor of what the government is presenting. So a majority of Germans have said that they support the way the government has been handling the crisis, and a majority of Germans also support the way the German Chancellor has been presenting those proposals. So yes, there are certain protests in different German cities, but overall, if you trust those polls that have been coming out, a majority of Germans do seem in favor of the way the government has been handling the issue.
Thomas, thank you for that update. Thomas Sparrow there, political correspondent with our partners. I almost missed the usual question. Thomas, thank you. We'll come to you again during the course of the week.